is the fact that if you are in possession of lies, you cannot know the truth. That should be the obvious thing. If you're believing a lie, you can't at the same time be believing or are in possession of the truth. You don't believe the truth. And so one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is the delusion that people have, that's both Christians and Hebrew Israelites, pertaining to their interpretation of Babylon being America. And so if you just do an overview of what John the Revelator says in Revelation 18, you should have a good understanding that of who Babylon possibly is. But the thing is that Christians and Hebrew Israelites alike are so far from the truth that they keep stuffing down the awful food that the Roman Catholics have provided back in their time. So I want to read to you Revelation 18, or at least some of Revelation 18. And then I want to show you two key terms that would tell you that it is impossible for Babylon to be America. America is a nation, correct? America would be a kingdom, correct? A government. So let's take a read of Revelation 18, and we'll start at verse 1. And it says, "And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." Now, two things I want to point out here is that Babylon is described as a female. It says the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. So that's the parabolic imagery that you have to pay attention to. Babylon is a female, a harlot, and that's why John says her. But what you also need to take notice here is that it says for all nations. Now, one question I would ask you is this: is America not a nation? Would America also be a part of the all in the statement for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication? You see, if America is Babylon, then America has to be separate from all nations, because all nations have drunk of the wrath of her fornication. That's talking about Babylon. And the kings of the earth, is the president of the United States a part of that statement? Is the president of the United States one of the rulers of many that exist in the earth today? So how can America be Babylon? The truth is that America is not Babylon. And like John has already stated, Satan has deluded every mind on the earth and in the world because they are believing things that are false. But let's continue to read. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup with which she hath filled, fill to her double. And then I want to go down and let's read this. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and live delicately with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all fine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of precious wood and brass and iron and marble. Now, where does all of these things come from? And cinnamon and odors and ointments and frank incense and wine and oil, fine flour and wheat and beast and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. Where does all of these items that the merchants of the earth have gotten rich with? Where do these things come from? Where does gold come from? Where does silver come from? Precious stones, even slaves. Where did they come from? Where was the first man created from? Where is wood? Where does wood come from? And all manner of vessels of ivory and precious wood. Where does it come from? Where does it come from? Well, let's read what it says here in Revelation 18. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are made rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Well, if the merchants of the earth were made rich through the abundance of her delicacies, and the merchants of the earth are weeping and mourning over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. And John describes the merchandise that they are not buying anymore. Where is this merchandise coming from? It's just not appearing out of thin air. It's appearing from the earth. Trees grow from the earth. Wine comes from the grapes that grow from the earth. Oil comes from the trees that grow from the earth. Fine flour and wheat are grown from the earth. Beasts were created from the earth, as man was created from the earth, who became slaves, and the souls of men all come from that one man, Adam, who was created from the earth, and they're weeping because the earth is burning. Babylon is this current place in which the inhabitants called mankind dwells. They dwell on the earth, folks. And so it's impossible for Babylon to be America when John is describing Babylon as the planet Earth. So as you meditate on this in your mind, I want you to think about the fact that how have you accepted the lies that you currently hold about Babylon being America? Listening to folks who claim to be prophets, who claim to be teachers, who claim to be preachers and pastors, who just feed the people who they claim God has brought into their midst to teach the word. They are telling you a bunch of lies. And so when you go to prophecy conferences that's talking about the end times, and you're hearing that America is Babylon, and you're hearing all this stuff about the image of the beast and the beast, I want you to take in consideration that you possibly may be listening to lies. I've just showed you one of the biggest ones. And why would Hasatan want you to think that America is Babylon? That's simply because Hasatan don't want you to know that the earth is the subject of God's wrath, and those inhabitants who have accepted the lies that Hasatan has spewed off and that they have believed. So it's easy to point to America as Babylon, because in ancient times, after the last apostle, Rome was Babylon, and that's also a lie. And so I just wanted to point that out to those who don't have real insight into the truth. Shalom.